On the second day of Christmas, namely 90s, came to me 2 drinks of sherry and a Pete in a pear tree.
Welcome to Namely 90s. Wow. The podcast that takes you back to the time before smartphones, Google, and Y2K. Join your hosts as they relive the pop culture that shaped a generation and the parts that many people wish they could forget. Listen in to the conversation about how the decade defined those who spent their childhood there and how it shaped them as adults. So, turn down the grunge and dial up the internet. Let's get started. It's time for Namely 90s.
That's right, you're listening to Namely 90s. My name's Andrew, and over there's Brandon.
That's me.
You can find us online at namely90s.com or on Instagram at namely90s with a 90s. You can also support us on Patreon at patreon.com/namely90s. Boy, I am broken today.
I mean, you can technically find us on X, but it's like...
I'm just not saying the right things. My voice sounds bad.
I don't like going there anymore. Yeah.
Pardon me.
You know, we're recording a little bit later than we usually do, but not like too much later. So that the weird thing is, like, we should have the same amount of energy.
No, my body's just given up on me. It's not an energy problem.
You've taken introducing the guests from me this year, so
I guess I should say this is the episode 2 of our 4th annual our 4th annual
podcast of horror. No,
I don't even know what I'm doing.
12 days of Christmas special.
12 days of Christmas special. It is later than usual.
We're professionals.
12 days of Christmas specials.
We've done this for 4 years.
Guests from other pop culture podcasts join us to discuss episodes of 90s Christmas shows.
Any holiday shows, honestly.
Yeah, Christmas, Hanukkah.
But just... who's joining us today, Andrew?
Today we have Scott Murphy of All 90s Action All the Time and New Horror Express. All 90s Action All the Time is a podcast giving you humorous plot recaps of all your favorite 90s action movies, hosted by New Horror Express's Scott Murphy and Bloodhound Pix's Kyle Hintz and Craig Draheim. You said incorrectly.
It's just Craig. Well, isn't it down to just Craig these days?
Yeah, no, I mean that's a somewhat out of date synopsis of what we.
Oh no!
I
blame Brandon.
No, it's the synopsis that I kept up. No, it's my fault. It's the synopsis that I kept up for ages, even well past its sell by date. I've changed it now, but that was very recently.
Did you see how fast I threw Brandon under the bus there, though?
Yeah.
I even deleted. So, I mean, I just recycled last year's outline and then updated it. Apparently, I didn't update all of it, but I did take out the part where I put Kyle was just season 1 ?
Kyle was just season 1. Yes, Kyle was just on there. So the very first season we did Steven Seagal, he was on that, and then it was just me and Craig after that point. Yeah,
and that's when you started bringing on the guest hosts, though, right?
Yeah. That was more that's when that.
Which this year I got to guest host on the Super Mario Brothers movie.
That is correct.
In March, which was fun. Like I've guested a lot on your show. Because the previous year I was on 3 of the 4 Pierce Brosnan Bond 2 of the 3 Brosnan Bonds.
So I was GoldenEye, Tomorrow Never Dies.
Yes. And then I was kicked off for the last one.
Well, I mean, it's understandable as to why. What? No. Sorry.
It's just I have a friend who is a film critic who is a Bond nerd, and I promised him that they would be on at least one, so I had to keep to that promise.
No, I was definitely monopolizing it up until that point. And
one person can only stand so many like Pierce Brosnan, James Bond quips. They'll print anything these days. That's my favorite one. When the guy falls into the newspaper machine.
It's a good one. It's a great one-liner. I love that one-liner.
And then there, and you probably get sick of me doing this would never work in real life map of
LA. No, my favorite one of that was the Escape from LA episode that we did where you're like, you can't paraglide from the Hollywood sign to over here, and I was like, I don't know, I've never been to LA, I don't care. And so like
you can't paraglide from the Hollywood sign to Disneyland
because you would be hit by errant gunfire before you could get to the you did more of like a distance sort of physics thing.
Distance wise,
just
plus there's an entire downtown LA in front of you.
Something about an updraft from a building. I don't know, whatever.
Let's see. This year you were focusing on films from 1993, like Super Mario Bros. And you did City Hunter, American Yakuza, Gunman, Judgment Night, and Joshua Tree, and you had an interview with Nick DeSemmelin.
That is correct about his action book covering kind of 80s and 90s action and the kind of main action stars of that era. Yeah.
And then do you have a few more episodes coming out this year or
no? We had a bit of a break this year because like I had some health issues, and so we just kind of stopped for a little bit. And then we decided instead of playing catch up for the rest of the year that we would just focus on next year. So we've already recorded our first episode of next year. As has become the annual tradition. It's our third annual edition of January, celebrating everything Jackie Chan. So we'll kick off the year with Drunken Master 2. And then obviously, next year, 2024, we will be focusing on the films of 1994, which is a great year for action. So there's lots of big hitters coming your way next year.
Can we tease what we signed up for? Or are we still signed up for that one?
You are still signed up for that one. We can tease that. So Brandon and Andrew are all signed up for Clear and Present Danger, an excellent Harrison Ford adventure.
Oh yes, the second of his Jack Ryan films, I believe.
Right. Is it number 2? Yeah,
of his. Technically, it's the third.
It's the second Harrison Ford Jack Ryan film, but the third Jack Ryan film in total.
Excellent.
And that was after two other films that I really wanted to do, and Andrew was like, no.
We can't teach too much of the season, so we're just going to give that episode away.
But I might force him to watch it at some other point because I really wanted to do one of those. So fun note, as I was going back through our messages this year, last year after I think it was early January, you messaged and you were like, you suggested a show for us to watch for the Christmas specials, and I totally blanked on it.
That's right. But actually, I much prefer this way because I realized that if, for example, we covered the Father Ted Christmas special or the League of Gentlemen Christmas special or Blackadder's Christmas Carol, and you happen to dislike them, we might never talk again.
Dangerous game because I like nothing.
Well, I mean, I would have been down for Blackadder, but didn't you say that one was outside of the 90s just by a hair?
I think yes. I think I discovered that Blackadder's Christmas Carol was actually like 89. So like because I think yes, I actually think it doesn't. We couldn't cover it anyway. That's
you
right.
You also mentioned Knowing Me, Knowing You with Alan Partridge.
Oh yes. Oh, that's a great. Yeah, that's great. That was a series, that was like a spoof talk show in the 90s, and like the Christmas special is called Knowing Me, Knowing You, which I think is a quality pun. But like, if you're not aware of Alan Partridge, it is Steve Coogan's greatest creation. And I definitely think more Americans should check out all things Alan Partridge and the kind of general works of Steve Coogan, who I think is a comedy genius.
See how in my head I was like Alan Parsons of the Alan Parsons Project.
No,
Steve Coogan.
Yeah.
Have to. He was Steve Coogan. Why do I recognize?
I remember
was
him
he on Monty
from
Python?
a variety of roles, but I specifically remember him from Hot Fuzz. So he played kind of a funny character there, and a variety of British comedians, obviously in that.
Oh yes, he does have a cameo in Hot Fuzz.
Yeah,
he's like
he
one
and,
of the top police chiefs. In Hot Fuzz,
And then I remember seeing him in Top Gear a few times.
Oh,
was he in
Tropic
the other
Thunder.
guys?
The
one
other guys with
Mark Wahlberg and Will Ferrell, wasn't he? In that?
Yes, he
He
was.
played sort of the villain.
Possibly, yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think
I
so.
love that movie,
I
by
was
the
going
way.
to say that I thought that most American audiences would probably most know him for his role in Tropic Thunder. I think that's one of his bigger roles.
Yeah,
I remember that. Although
we're not allowed to talk about that movie anymore. It's a problem here.
Yeah,
Yikes.
you know, Tom Cruise doing fat guy makeup.
Yeah.
So yes, we mentioned all 90s action all the time, but you also have a podcast called New Horror Express.
That is correct. Yeah, so New Horror Express is like where I interview like indie horror movie writers, directors, actors, novelists, all that kind of stuff. And yeah, unfortunately, I'm going to have to wind it down. So there's only another 2 episodes that will be coming out. But I will be keeping all the episodes up in the feed. There is just over 180 episodes in total that I did over, starting 2018, so nearly 6 years. So yes, people can still check out all the episodes, and there's loads of great interviews with loads of great indie horror directors, and people can discover all sorts of great indie horror films if they are so inclined.
Absolutely. And you covered everything I was going to say. Indie horror fans, this is a podcast for you. In-depth discussion with directors, and you have a great back catalog to go through. And there's a little indie horror movie that's coming out around the time that we recorded this through Blumhouse. I think it's Blumhouse. Based on a internet video game franchise. Do you have any thoughts on Five Nights at Freddy's, even though it's not currently out yet when we're recording? Oh, is it? Wait. No, it comes out this week.
I don't currently have any real thoughts on it, but here in Wellington, in New Zealand, we have a horror film festival called Terrify, which starts tomorrow. Well, for me, a couple of days for you because it's Wednesday. Anyway, time differences. Anyway, so Five Nights at Freddy's, the opening film of the festival. So I will be seeing it tomorrow. Cool. More thoughts later on in the week, I guess.
should have booked you a little bit later. It looks like I'm actually gonna go to the theaters to watch this, even though I can just watch it on Peacock because it's coming out same day streaming for us. But yeah, have you seen any good horror films this year that you would recommend to the general audience?
Yeah, so because of like a kind of delay in release, Peril came out this year in New Zealand, although it was last year for America. So that's that's a Ty West film as part of a trilogy. I think both their first film X and Peril are both excellent. I think that one of the most talked about horror movies of the year is a possession-based film from Australia called Talk to Me, which I really enjoyed. That one's really good. There's some really good ones I'm looking forward to seeing at Terrify. I know that Cobweb is a film that seems to be getting a lot of really great reviews. So that's one I'm looking forward to seeing. But yeah, I would say that like probably my top 2 so far are Talk to Me and Pearl, but I've seen like a bunch of other ones that are good as well. I actually just last night I saw a really fun kind of sci-fi horror thriller called No One Will Save You.
I think I wanted to see that one. That's on my list.
Which it's a fun film. So I enjoyed that, and it's available on Disney Plus, and so it's some good. I don't think it's like I think last year was more of a stellar year for horror, but I think this year, it's still good. There's still some real gems out there.
And also, they're making a sequel to what was it, Pooh, or the slasher
yes.
Pooh?
I never saw Blood and Honey. It got very bad reviews, but some people were very enthusiastic about it on horror Twitter. So I still might check it out, even though I don't have exactly high hopes.
I think that the novelty only takes you so far, you know.
To be fair to the makers of that film, they did make an absolute killing. The profit, the box office that film made, compared to its budget, was remarkable. I mean, like, that's why it's getting a sequel, because it was really quite remarkable for like the indie budget they were working with. So like, as much as like I might not think that it's probably not a great movie, even though I've not seen it, so I will say I've not seen it, so I can't judge too much. But they made a success of it.
It's I haven't seen it yet either, but just watching that trailer like a couple times, I'm like, why? And hopefully they don't Blair Witch it, like too much studio interference on the sequel and make it not what it was the first time. Where can people find you and your podcasts?
So all 90s action all the time. You can just find on all your kind of regular podcatchers. I guess the main ones are Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Now that like Stitcher's dead. So like that used to be the third main one, but like anyway, but like most platforms I would say, but like those are the two main ones. And for New Horror Express, again, kind of similar, but also New Horror Express has its own website. So I do have like newhorrorexpress.com if you want to check out on the website. Welcome the site traffic.
Cool. Shall we get into the show that we brought you on for? Or
sure.
Let's do it.
All right. Today we're talking about the season 1, episode 12 of Frasier, Miracle on 3rd or 4th Street. But as always, let's talk about our background with the show Frasier. You want to go first, Scott, or
sure,
force Andrew to go? Whoever feels like
I don't mind. I don't mind going first at all.
All right.
Yeah. I always liked Frasier. I think I've seen most I don't know if I can say I've seen every episode of Frasier, but I've certainly seen most episodes of Frasier. So like in the UK, in the 90s, basically, if you didn't have Sky or cable, which we didn't, because we couldn't afford it, basically there was 4 channels that was available to you: BBC 1 and 2, ITV, Channel 4. Channel 4 was a channel that had more American imports than any of the other channels. And so a lot of the American sitcoms were on Channel 4. I don't know if I started watching Frasier as soon as it came to the UK, but I do know that I started watching Friends right from the very beginning of when Friends came to the UK. And I mention that because it was shown in Frasier and Friends was shown in a kind of American comedy block on Channel 4 in the 90s, where you would have Ellen at 9, Friends at 9:30, and Frasier at 10. And so I certainly started watching it from like season 2, from 1995, which is apparently a long time ago.
Isn't that terrifying?
It's a terrifyingly long time ago, nearly 30 years ago. So that's when I started watching Frasier in around 1995. And then I watched it to the kind of end of its run in the mid 2000s. And then it wasn't repeated as much as Friends on Channel 4 because nothing ever in the history of television has been repeated as much as Friends on Channel 4. But it was repeated quite often. So I did quite often see kind of repeat episodes of Frasier. So yes, definitely seen a lot of Frasier in my life.
What I find most surprising is that Ellen was included in the comedy block. Hey, zing. Okay, sorry. I feel like I grew up with Frasier. I don't think I never watched it like in a structured way, but I remember it. I remember being a kid and it was a little bit over my head and I didn't know why he talked like that, but I remember the show and have generally fond memories of it.
As some of our followers know, we're recording this in October, so I just finished a month-long rewatch of Cheers and Frasier, and my brain's soup. So,
I bet.
I tried to do it leading up to the reboot coming out on Paramount Plus. Which looks like it's terrifying Scott that he didn't know that there was a reboot of Frasier.
Oh no, I do know that there's a reboot of Frasier. Okay. I was just processing. I was processing your month of because that's like I don't know, like 22 seasons of television. I think roughly, isn't it? Yep. Yeah. So yeah, which would be because they're like long seasons. That's like. I don't know. I'm guessing over 500 episodes between the two shows.
I think it's 275 each episodes each, so 550. Yeah, it was like watching all of Star Trek before they had all this new content. No, it was a massive undertaking, and like I said, my brain is soup after watching all of it. But I remember watching Frasier as a kid. And I didn't realize until this rewatch of the series, because I'd seen a lot of it, but like really, I didn't really like made sure that I watched the show until it was like season 8 and onward, because I like every episode from that point forward, I was like, oh, I know exactly the plot of this episode. It's in my memory, and I didn't realize how much like both Frasier and Niles kind of formed parts of my personality, and like I've integrated some of their qualities and traits into my own, and now terrifies me. Fun story. We were I went out to eat with my girlfriend and her brother who's visiting town, and we went to like this chain restaurant that like breakfast place that's like, we're Cajun and we do Cajun brunch, and everything's like giant platters of everything. And I was just like, the menu had pictures on it, and I was just like, what fresh hell is this?
Awesome.
Yeah, I was being very Frasier quippy in my mind, but the thing that I really, because you can go back and we did a deep dive on Frasier in October or September, and listeners can go back and if you really want to know about the character, go back and listen to that. But it's interesting seeing a shift from Frasier on Cheers into Frasier in this series, because they're the same character, but it shifts from Frasier being like this the straight man, like not the straight man, like the eccentric one in Cheers, because all the bar patrons are like zany characters and caricatures of people, and then shifting him to Frasier, where he's supposed to be the sane one out of everyone around him.
But don't you think like he's the eccentric one compared to like the types of folks that would frequent a bar with that regularity?
Yes.
You know, like he's the professional, they're the blue collar.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly. So it's not that he's like, not, I don't know. Yeah, I see your point.
Just like in terms of characterization,
Very
different character between the two series.
Yes.
Yeah. I guess that's true. Because Cheers was another show that was shown on Channel 4.
I watched a lot of repeats of that, but I'd never seen like the early years with Shelley Long until this watch through. Like I just remember Kirstie Alley on that show because apparently she ate Shelley Long. That bad Family Guy joke.
Speak that way about the dead.
I know. Rip to the max, Kirstie Alley and Shelley Long's career. So for those of you that don't know, Frasier is an American television sitcom. It was broadcast on NBC for 11 seasons. It aired from September 16th, 1993 to May 13th, 2004. It was a spin-off of the sitcom Cheers, and it continues the story of Frasier Crane, psychiatrist, played by Kelsey Grammer, who returns to his hometown of Seattle as a radio show host. He reconnects with his father, Martin, a retired police officer who got shot in the hip and is forced to move in with Frasier, and his younger brother, Niles, played by David Hyde Pierce, a fellow psychiatrist. And also in the cast was Perry Gilpin as Roz Doyle, the producer of Frasier's show, and Jane Leaves Jane Leaves as Daphne Moon, who's Martin's live-in caregiver. Thank you to the both of you for helping me out on that one.
Oh, no, that's all right. I think it's Jane Leaves, but I'm not. Like,
that's what I thought. And also there was a well-trained, it's not a Jack Russell Terrier, it's a Andrew.
I believe it is a Jack Russell Terrier. Jack Russell Terrier? I think it's a wire-haired Jack Russell Terrier.
That's what it is. Wired hair Jack Russell, Eddie, who is Martin's pet dog.
For some reason, I always thought Eddie was Martin's name.
That's fair.
Also, I just have to say, I absolutely hate Martin's character. He's the most grating, annoying, just obnoxious character I can remember on TV, and this further reinforced it with the yelling.
This wasn't sequence. A good episode. This episode basically replays like the first episode where they're like establishing this isn't my house and I feel like I'm imposing on you. Before we get to the episode though, has anyone seen the Frasier reboot yet?
I've seen the first episode of it.
Okay, and thoughts?
My thoughts are, I didn't love it. But like, I mean, the characters might get better. I have a feeling that this is going to be like kind of like a Joey. Oh my god! But I could be wrong. And I'm rooting for it because I like Frasier the character. I think that Kelsey Grammer is still in the first episode. I thought he's still good as a character. He's still one of the highlights. I am rooting for it as well because you're probably not aware, but the guy who plays the British professor is played by a guy called Nicholas Lyndhurst, who in the UK is like a kind of national treasure, because he was one of the leads in a sitcom called Only Fools and Horses, which is probably the most successful and popular sitcom in British television history. And also he was in a sitcom called Goodnight Sweetheart, which was one of the most popular sitcoms of the 90s in the UK. So like he's something of a sitcom legend in the UK. So like I just based on liking the character and kind of rooting for Nicholas Lyndhurst as well. I kind of want it to work out, but I feel like it's not going to based on that first episode.
Why can't they do better? You had 19 years to cast. I mean, this is true of any reboot. Like, do better. You had a lot of time. A lot is riding on this. Those are the jokes you wrote. These are the characters you cast. I don't know. It's just, it's kind of, they're shameless cash grabs. They're not really meant to have any longevity to them, and that's what's kind of a shame. Really,
I liked Kelsey Grammer's thought on it because when David Hyde Pierce said he wouldn't come back to play Niles, they like retooled it completely so that like no original Frasier cast would return as permanent characters other than Frasier. And Kelsey Grammer's like, well, this is the third act of Frasier, Cheers, Frasier, and then
but the only way a reboot
also
works
Frasier
is if like a majority of the main characters are back in a significant way, other than like that crappy thing where they're only there, but to the extent where they hand over the torch to the new unlikable characters with no charisma.
Girl Meets World.
Yeah, well, any reboot. It's just it's a disaster.
Actually, no, that's a good one.
Stop it.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, the first episode, the audio mixing was terrible with the laugh track, which again, it was a live audience, but still, it was like they turned on the laugh sign at like every quip, and I'm like, not all of them are funny. You should.
Well, I mean, in this episode, I know we're not talking about the episode specifically, but like there were some laugh tracks where people were like legitimately dying. You could hear them laughing in a real way, like it wasn't. You know what I mean? It wasn't.
Yeah, it didn't sound like factory. Yeah. No. I've seen at this point. I think I've seen the 3 episodes that are out. Way to date this. It doesn't get better. But it's staying at middling. Just like How I Met Your Father was like. They just canceled it after its 2nd season, and it was just starting to get good, where it had been middling the entire time.
But they had their chance, and then they blew it, and then it started to get good right as they got canceled.
Well, they canceled it after the 2nd season finished, but they left it on a cliffhanger because they didn't realize they're going to get canceled immediately. And then there was another one. There was another like half-assed reboot that I was like watching because I was like, yeah, might as well. Like it's just a half hour of my time each week, and that one also got canceled. And I was just like, but I was starting to enjoy it. But
I think that was. I think middling is correct. Like I don't think like I watched the first episode and I didn't think it was awful. I just thought that like it's just not. There's no punch to it. Like all the gags are a little bit labored, a little bit lazy, a little bit clunky. Like the performances are a mixed bag. Like I said, I thought Kelsey Grammer was good. I thought Nicholas Lyndhurst was good. I thought like the flatmate Eve might have potential, and I thought that the other Harvard professor might have potential as a character, but they're all kind of slightly bland and they're not kind of filled out properly. Like I say, I don't know. Maybe over the course of a full season, maybe I could be proven wrong, but yeah, that's where I kind of my thoughts were at watching that first episode.
Yeah. Coming fresh off of Frasier into Frasier, which is now terrible because it's the same name, different city, different show.
The same name.
But yeah.
Of course,
I
think that was my issue as well because like I watched the episode we were going to talk about. And then I watched like the first episode of the reboot, and I think there's just like a marked difference of like the way the kind of punchlines zing in the original and the way the punchlines kind of meander in the reboot.
This one seems more like a Big Bang Theory.
No, and of course Brandon and I are quite partial to the Seattle setting because we're from the Seattle area, so to me like it doesn't feel like Frasier if it's not in Seattle, and that's a problem.
If you're taking Frasier back to Boston, you have to take him back to Cheers, or then it's not as interesting.
Correct.
In my opinion, because it would be interesting to see where everyone is, because a lot of Frasier had like Shelley Long came back, his other like all of his ex-wives came back. Woody Harrelson came for an episode. Ted Danson came for an episode. But that was all after season 1, I guess, except for Lilith. But
from what I've read, rumors-wise, it seems like Lilith and Roz might return at some point.
I believe I saw that.
Episodes.
Or at least a cameo appearance, and
at least,
yeah. Shall we get on to Miracle on 3rd or 4th Street?
Sure.
This was kind of for me, it was an episode that went nowhere, but it started at the station with on Christmas Eve, and Frasier was doing his last show before Christmas. They had a bunch of fun interactions, and Frasier got Roz a squirting microphone, even though they said they weren't going to exchange gifts. There was the office party going on outside.
I think it's funny. They're like, we're not going to exchange gifts, but I had to break that agreement to buy this horrible gift that's just lame and cheesy.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Gift.
Yeah, I know, but that's still a gift, and then you've decided to break the agreement to get something crappy. Like, I mean, if you saw something special you couldn't resist, that'd be one thing, but
like Roz did,
like she did exactly.
That's true. I actually thought that like. I realized by the end of the episode that I had seen this episode before, but at the start of the episode, I kind of assumed that him getting a comedy gift and her getting like a real proper gift was going to be the meat of the episode of he has to run around on Christmas Eve trying to get a proper gift.
Oh, thank goodness it wasn't that.
That's quite often, that's like a classic
setup.
trope of Christmas specials.
Yeah, that's a good point. Andrew said before we watched this, I could probably predict exactly what goes on in this episode. Did anything in this episode match what you thought was going to happen?
No, this one was slightly unique in enough of a way that I couldn't guess what was going to happen.
Yeah. Same. Although I just watched it, so I knew what happened. But and also it's fun to note that the briefcase that Roz gets Frasier in this episode, he has for the remainder of the series.
Oh.
Or at least
that's fun.
At least for a lot of seasons. He might lose it at one point when his identity gets stolen in a later season. But I think he has it for the rest of the series.
By his evil twin. No.
No, it's just some lazy guy that wanted to be Frasier. And this is season 1 Frasier, so he still has like his curly mullet thing going on.
What were we thinking in 1993? That is
Roz has the big hair.
Possibly the worst hairstyle.
There was a lot of, to be fair, there was a lot of mullets going on still at that stage, you know,
achy,
like,
breaky.
you know, like Billy Ray Cyrus. I mean, I know that he's obviously been cancelled a long time ago, but you know, like, you know, Mel Gibson was still at the height of his fame and still mullety, and you know, like,
yeah, but I feel like it was a full mullet. This is like a receding hairline mullet, which is like always kind of tragic because it's like we can still tell. Like you haven't.
If you're balding but also have Jerry curls, is that the right?
No, probably.
Sorry.
It was an interesting setup for the first. I forgot. I mean, I just watched all of Frasier, but back when I watched Frasier again, it was like, oh, I forgot that it's like just a bunch of like short bits that make up an entire story. You know, they'll title card each little act, half an act, each scene, I guess. But yeah, it ends with Frasier having to take a strong woman home that is trying to force herself upon him, and then we get home.
I should he said the phrase that he had to pour her into a cab. I kind of forgot people use that phrase, and I love that terminology. It's funny.
Yes.
Meaning she's drunk.
Yes. Sorry, I just read my note for when Frasier gets home. Niles is having Daphne try out outfits for Maris's Christmas present. And she's in like a skimpy little black dress, and just Niles doesn't look good going back to the series. No,
there are a few problematic sequences in this episode. I mean, it's a 93, so it's a little bit.
I have to say that like that it's problematic to me, like watching the episode, I think there's only one truly problematic gag that I flinched at.
At the station?
No, it's in the apartment. Well,
okay.
We can talk about it in a minute if you want. But like, yeah, I think there's parts of it that are are problematic, but they just about get away with it.
Yeah.
So like how creepy Niles is, and like him getting Daphne to try on the dresses and stuff like that is problematic. But David Hyde Pierce is so kind of likable, naturally kind of innocent and kind of sweet natured and likable that it just about gets away with it.
Pulls it off enough that people don't question it when they get married in season 9 or whatever.
Exactly.
Unfortunately, that's usually how real life predators actually get away with it, because they're likable.
True.
And but then eventually after like 30 years it comes back to bite them, which it should.
Absolutely.
You're talking about when Niles invites Daphne to the cabin with the family, and then she's like, "No, I'm seeing me uncle down in San Francisco." Nope, that's not the right accent.
Nope.
No.
It was a good try. I mean,
it's interesting. Yeah, it was a good attempt at a vaguely English accent.
I tried. Usually it's Andrew. Andrew's the one that gets started.
I'm typically doing a vaguely English accent. Yes.
That's good. But yes, that is the joke. That is the joke because
they use old terminology.
Yeah, it's partly that, but like you can make jokes around that subject, possibly. But basically the punchline of the joke is we're supposed to be laughing at the fact that there is an older man who is a heavier man who is a transvestite. So that's what the joke is, and that's just nasty, and like it's just one of those things. I know it's a 90s program. I know this episode is 30 years old, so some of it's not going to age well. But it's the one joke in the program that I recoiled from the television from. I was just like,
see, here's the problem. Not because of the joke itself, but because it's 30 years later, how shocking it is. I actually laughed at that joke, but not because of the intended reason.
Yes,
but because it was
I get it.
Shocking.
I was like, he said what? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But back then it wasn't a shocking joke. It was just in bad taste, and people thought it was funny.
Yes.
Yep.
As the plot moves along, Lilith calls, tell Frasier that Frederick has a chance to go to Austria because his favorite movie right now is The Sound of Music, because that's a traditionally Christmassy movie for Americans because of, I think I explained it on an old episode, but they would always replay it on reruns around Christmas time. And so a lot of older generations associate The Sound of Music with Christmas.
It was also just a setup for later in the episode.
Yes. Well,
yes.
Yeah, he has a chance to stay at the Sound of Music house. Julie Andrews is having dinner with them, and they're going to go to Euro Disney afterwards. So
like, how rich are these people? And were they implied to be this rich in Cheers?
I mean, they're both doctors, and they're both psychiatrists.
Psychiatrists don't make that much money.
Frasier had like a get rich quick scheme, psychiatry stuff in Cheers, where, technically it was on an episode of Wings. He went and sold his self-help program. And
I think, didn't Jeff Bezos make most of his money in AM radio? Pretty sure.
But yeah, they were rich doctors, and that was back when doctors were actually rich, quote unquote.
Yeah.
Because
they're to be fair, like they are like psychologists who are probably in private practice, who are probably got a client list of like relatively wealthy patients.
Right.
I mean, they charge like $200 for 40 minutes, you know?
Yeah.
They probably are quite wealthy.
Yeah. And then, and Frasier, like in the series, it makes it sound like being a radio host is like as lucrative as being a television star.
I mean, he's rich enough to drive like a 7 Series BMW, which feels like the sort of rich person's, but actually not rich person's car.
And
presumably in this fictional universe, like Frasier is getting like Howard Stern wages.
Yeah. And he's like, I mean, to have a 19th floor apartment that views the Space Needle from
green
that.
screen. Yeah, sorry, Space Needle.
Yeah. That wasn't even a green screen. That was just like a backdrop.
Yeah, true.
But yeah. And
I mean, I guess we shouldn't go too far into the kind of logic, because like all sitcoms are like this.
True.
It's all sitcoms are like, how do these people afford these massive apartments with apparently relatively menial jobs?
Okay. I need to take a pause here. We've started rewatching New Girl, and it pisses me off that they're like, this apartment sucks. And I'm like, this is the best apartment I've ever seen. It's true. And they have no money.
Loft apartment.
Give me a break. But you're right. If you, as my wife said, we said this in the last episode, I pick shows apart. Then my wife will go, it's fiction. I go, that's a good point.
The communal bathroom was a little much.
I just, when things are believable, I do get it. I do get it, because like there's certain movies that I'll watch where like as a kid I would just watch Home Alone and accept everything, just accept that this is entertainment. As an adult, I do look at it now and go like, how do they afford this house? What do these parents do? This is a mansion. But like realism is boring. Like if you just watch Frasier in real life, he would just go to work every day and then he would come home and he would just be boring.
Also, he would have a set schedule for his show, not like he randomly shows up.
That's not how radio works at all.
Let's see. Covered Daphne. We covered Freddie.
So he gets in a fight with his dad, Martin, because of Martin wants to keep the old traditions alive. I heard this one before. But Frasier wants to do new traditions like chili pepper lights on the tree instead of the old like 1960s lights that are about to just short and burn the entire high rise down.
Yeah, with chili pepper lights though.
That was a thing.
That was a weird thing.
Is that like in the same vein as the people who are like too into Jimmy Buffett and have like tiki bars in their backyards?
Okay. Yes, but Frasier would not be that person. He has African
I know.
Art.
I get it, but they had to create the drama so they could have a fight, so Frasier could storm out and decide to have Christmas by himself and cover the other guy's
Bulldog.
shift the next day. Bulldog.
Yeah, but not. And then, like you said earlier, Scott, this was the point where I thought, this seems like the meat and potatoes of the episode. This is the plot that will actually be discussed and like developed, and then it doesn't. It doesn't get resolved. Next scene is Frasier apologizing to Roz that they have to work on Christmas after her mother's flown out from Wisconsin. Her mother being the governor or a senator or something in Wisconsin. She doesn't say it in this episode. It's just something that's brought up a little bit further down. She might be the mayor of their small town. I don't remember. And then
the big cheese, Wisconsin.
Here's what made me recoil from my screen. Frasier dressed up in a grungy sweatshirt dressed down so he later would be confused for a homeless man.
But isn't he always just on the radio? Like, why does he have to? Couldn't he just wear that every day?
Because he's Frasier. He always wears a suit and tie, and he's well dressed. And like leading up to this episode, I don't think he's ever worn anything in this show that looks like that.
This is a classic signifier of being down or depressed, much in the same way as manly stubble is I
was about to say, I think it's the exact wardrobe he wore after he was left at the altar by Diane on their wedding trip in Cheers. He forced his female coworker to hug him by saying, "Come to Papa." That made me recoil from the screen.
No.
But they're friends or something. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I guess I guess it is awkward, but because I've seen the whole show, and know that they're established as good friends.
Like if you had said that to some intern, or something.
God, that'd be awful. That'd be awful.
No.
No. But I mean, they've only been working together for 6 months at this point.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
And then so they take 4 hours of collars. He sends Roz home after 2. After the collar that says, "Mommy, mommy, the puppy Santa left me won't wake up."
I laughed at that one. That was pretty good.
And Scott, you mentioned the caller calls in and tells Frasier, the one thing that will always bring you cheer during the holidays is watching The Sound of Music.
I assume when they did that, I thought that Frasier was going to start crying like that one listener, because they kind of like zoomed in and like panned up toward his face.
But he just...
Oh, did you notice from the credits? I just saw this. I don't know why. I was watching the credits of the episode. That caller who cries, Barry, is Ben Stiller.
Yep.
You know what the funniest thing is I was like, this sounds like someone doing a Ben Stiller impression. And I wasn't wrong. I mean, I was. But
I mean, technically, you were wrong in the sense that it's not a Ben Stiller impression. It's actual Ben Stiller. But you were in the right ballpark.
Yeah. So funny you should mention that. Guest callers are always celebrity guests, which they show the pictures of at the very final episode of each season. The callers for this show were Rosemary Clooney, Mel Brooks, Dominic Dunn, Ben Stiller, and Eric Stoltz. I think Eric Stoltz was the final caller with was that the Sound of Music guy? I think that's
Sound of Music guy.
Yeah, I think that.
Pretty sure.
You know, Eric Stoltz, the guy that wasn't Marty McFly in Back to the Future.
He did other things. You know, he's had a solid career. I think he can't complain too much. I mean, he might have had a bigger career if he was.
I don't even know who that. Like, I know the name, but I couldn't pick him out of a lineup.
Have you seen Pulp Fiction?
I don't want to talk about it.
Okay.
No, I've seen very few movies, unfortunately.
And usually the popular movies he's sworn against seeing because they're popular.
That's not exactly true. Okay.
Have you seen classic creature feature Anaconda?
You know, no.
I think I made you watch the trailer for that at one point.
Okay.
Yeah. I always picture Eric Stoltz from just like the demo of him as Marty McFly. Sure. But yeah, he's
in a lot of indie films. To be fair, I don't like. He's not in like a lot of kind of like big features. I say Pulp Fiction is probably the most famous film he's in.
You'd think he and Crispin Glover would have gotten along really well in that film. Just being weird, random actor guys. All right, that's speaking of weird, random actor guys. Frasier is wearing the rowdy sweatshirt, as we mentioned. He stops in a 24-hour diner on the way home, and it's the only place that's open. So he wants to get his Christmas dinner there instead of, I guess, the family's at the cabin. I don't. Yep. Yeah. And then there's a houseless man next to him in the diner, and calls back to another caller who said, "I lost my shoes that were on top of my car, and some homeless guy picked it up, and I felt good giving it charity." Because I didn't stop and run the guy over and take my shoes back. And that was the same. And that was the man that found the shoes sitting next to Frasier. After eating his sad meal, as he's leaving, he realizes he forgot his wallet somewhere. He's also, at this point, dropped his keys on the ground without noticing. And then... the guy he was sitting next to gets a collection going for him to pay for the dinner. Which Frasier keeps protesting. No, I'm actually paid really well.
No, I'm actually rich. He should have just at one point said that, you know?
Yeah. And then he has to get into his Beamer. Oh, after the homeless man, gives a great story, or not a great speech about this is the day for us, Christmas, and this meal here, and screw those people with fancy foreign cars and whatever. And Frasier has to get in.
He said the rest of the year is for elites and people who own foreign cars like that, and points to the car. outside, which is free. But and I think like the that's probably the best bit of physical comedy in the episode, where Frasier crawls along the pavement and you just see his hand pop up, and he just crawls into the car to stare, and then obviously has to come back in because he's lost his car keys as well. He dropped his car keys too.
That is the worst thing, though. Have you ever done that? Like forgotten your wallet, or been in a position where you could pay but you just like physically could not? Or the other one that's a pain is like my card will get declined at the checkout. But I'm like, no, it's I swear there's money in my account, and like the bank shut it off for a security risk or something. And I'm standing there, and of course they're like, sure it is, scumbag. That is the worst feeling.
Yeah. That's not happened to me since like I've had Apple Pay.
That made a big that happened to me once. I got to actually recently I was at Panda Express, which is, do you have that over there? I don't know, maybe it's like a chain Chinese restaurant, and they have a drive-through,
like Chinese takeaway.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, cool.
They have a drive-through. I get to the drive-through, order my food. They're about to hand it to me, and I'm sure they can just dump it back in wherever they got it. But I didn't have my card, and I like hand them my phone through the window for them to tap it. But I will say that Apple Pay has been quite life-changing in that way.
Until you get to the one device that's like broken, and so it doesn't take your RFID, and then you have to be like, oh. Gotta pull my card out for this, like.
Yeah. Oh god, the humanity.
Yeah. Oh, my butt's gonna miss that giant square that I usually have next to it.
Of course, this scene was supposed to demonstrate that although the sad and depressed are all sad and depressed on Christmas, that people can still have a giving heart and.
Is that what it was? Oh.
Yes, I think it's supposed to, like, because like basically he's had this big argument with his family, and then he goes to the radio for this his talk show where everything's really depressing and everything's bleak, and like this is supposed to be that this one scene and this one act of kindness is supposed to kind of bring back his faith in humanity and is what makes him want to reach it back out to his family. I think that's what's supposed to be restored. Like the moral of the story.
Over my head.
And of course the guy gives him till the end. One of the guys gives him a quarter and tells him to go call his dad, and he says, I think I will.
And then walks away from his car.
Yeah. Well, at that point, I mean, you can't ask for the keys. He just comes back tomorrow with his suit and whatever and then gets his car back.
Yeah. By the way, but the car that he never locked.
True. It was kind of a bad part of town.
Bad part of town in Seattle. Just saying. Anyway, and then the final, like the tag scene was Eddie unwrapping a Christmas present because
dogs like to do that.
Because it's Christmas.
Because it's
I did like the one piece of physical comedy early in the episode where Eddie like laps up some of Niles' eggnog, and then Niles in the same scene without a cut drinks the eggnog.
That was good.
And also, like, going back to things that could play as problematic, but kind of work because of the way it plays. Niles' bit of physical comedy, where Daphne is talking about how she, the way she got out of the dress, and the could be creepy, but the way David Hyde Pierce drops that glass is hilarious.
It is, yeah. I don't think that is problematic. Like, a man being sort of like befuddled by a charm,
no, I mean, like, it's not
a little pervy because she said she had to take her underwear off to fit into the dress, and then it was caught on her at some point.
That's true.
I don't know. I feel like he gets the same pass that Neil Patrick Harris got in How I Met Your Mother for being a sleazebag, because both actors are gay.
I think as long as it's like a tongue-in-cheek sleazebag, it's okay.
I think one thing is, I think the thing with Niles just about works because the character is also quite innocent in a way. So it kind of, I think that takes the sting out of it. And I think like the Neil Patrick Harris thing is different. I think you can do more with that character and kind of push the jokes in an even cruder direction just because you're never supposed to be on that character's side. It's not like, so I think it's like sometimes, yeah, but the thing is, I think like sometimes, when people look back at say Friends and say, oh, this is problematic, that's problematic. I think these do hit clunkier because Friends, they're supposed to be your friends. You're supposed to like those characters. Yeah. Whereas Barney Stinson, you're supposed to think is a piece of shit. So you can make those jokes edgier because you're never supposed to be on that character's side. You're always laughing at how much of a piece of shit he is, not like, oh, isn't he a hilarious guy?
Yeah, Friends is complicated because I do like the show. I do.
Oh no, I like Friends,
but
as
it's
well,
like very much, as I like to say, it's fat suits and homophobia. I mean, that's pretty much the entire premise of that show. But the delivery, I think somehow.
But they're your friends while doing it.
Yeah. Oh, great.
I mean, Again, I love the show. I love the characters. Niles is technically Daphne's employer. He and Maris pay for her to do the physical therapy for Martin.
It doesn't seem that he actually needs a live-in caregiver. Does anyone else he appears to be pretty independent, pretty mobile. Like he could probably go to the physical therapist's office. But instead he needs sort of an attractive it's the antics ensue. That's what every time you pitch a sitcom, it's like, well, a retired cop and his live-in caregiver and weird son and antics ensue. It's always that way.
Do you know what, right? Here's a question that I was just thinking about while watching the episode. How old is Martin supposed to be?
He's in his mid-60s, I thought.
Yeah. You know how old John Mahoney was in 1993? 53 years old.
Oh my gosh, that guy did not age well.
Well, have you seen that meme going around lately of it's from Father of the Bride and it's Steve Martin and Diane Keaton and it like they both have gray hair and they look old relative to what we think ourselves of, and it's like these people were supposed to be 49 in this movie. This is what the 90s thought 49-year-olds were. And it's just like, that's a good point. We're not old. We don't look like that now.
Yeah.
No, it's also funny because... sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, also, John Mahoney was only 15 years older than Kelsey Grammer.
Thank you. I was just doing that math. Yeah, that's a little problematic as well.
And so he had him when he was 15. It never brought up in the show.
Well, I mean, obviously, the mother was, some sort of smart researcher, so she pulled them young. Don't like where I'm going with that joke. Yeah. Final thoughts on the episode?
I enjoyed it. It made me actually consider rewatching Friends, and I laughed out loud.
Friends?
And a variety of. It was better than some of the stuff that's on now. That's for sure.
Scott.
Yeah, even though the episode's a bit oddly structured and it's slightly aimless, so there's lots of kind of avenues where you think like this is what the episode's going to be about, whether that be about the gifts or about the sexually harassing lady, and antics ensue there, or about the stuff of the family. But it's kind of like almost like 3 mini stories instead. But I kind of laughed throughout the episode, and I thought there was, with the Sound of Music thing and the thing with the trainers, a couple of good callbacks, and I thought it was, I laughed throughout, and I really enjoyed revisiting this episode. Yeah.
Does it appear that, by the way, that Kelsey Grammer doesn't really seem to age in any real way? Like, he kind of looks the same.
You should take a look at our deep dive episode for Frasier. I put Kelsey Grammer in Cheers, Kelsey Grammer midway through Frasier, and then Kelsey Grammer in the current Frasier. Looks like he's aged maybe 10 years over that span.
It's crazy. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but I just wanted to say that.
And for
I
me,
think like Kelsey Grammer's like one of those guys who's like, he, was born is probably just always looked like he's in his mid 40s. And just like that's he just retained that look.
Yeah, even though now he has a daughter in her mid 40s. Yikes. And for my final thought was, did we just watch an episode of Seinfeld? None of the plots really went anywhere. But yeah, it was a good laugh, and I think I liked it better than the other Frasier Christmas episode we watched, but I don't remember. And that's it for this holiday edition of Name Me 90s. Thank you to Scott Murphy of All 90s Action All the Time and New Horror Express for coming on. Let our listeners know where they can find you, Scott.
They can. I just realized like when you were doing that, I was giving you the kind of thumbs up and stuff like that, and I keep forgetting this is on YouTube, and I just look like just a damn fool. But anyway, people can listen to more of my tomfoolery. All 90s Action all the time. You can listen to it on Spotify, Apple Podcasts. You can contact us via Twitter. I'm just going to keep calling it Twitter. We now have a Facebook page because we suspect Twitter might fall into the sea any day now. And also we're looking to see what other social media site takes off, whether that be Bluesky or Threads or Mastodon or one of those.
Rhinoceros.
Yeah, whatever, whatever one wins that battle, we might be on there too at some point. But mainly, we're just Twitter and Facebook. And then New Horror Express, newhorrorexpress.com. You can check us out on again, Twitter and Facebook, Twitter at New Horror EXP. I think that's pretty much it. Again, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all your regular podcatchers.
All right. And as always, you can find us on Instagram and YouTube at Namely90s with 90s and tell us how your holidays are going. If you'd like to support the show, please check out our Patreon, patreon.com/Namely90s, also with 90s. And finally, you can contact us through our website, namely90s.com, but not really. Please subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, Audible, Tossed Salads and Scrambled Eggs again, Deezer, TuneIn, iHeart, Good Pods, and wherever you get your podcasts from. I'm Brandon. That's Andrew. Thank you one final time to Scott Murphy of All 90s Action All the Time and New Horror Express, and we'll catch you tomorrow for day 3 of the 12 Days of Christmas specials.
Just to spite you, I'm going to get the contact form working before these come out.